Welcome to Talking with Patrick, talking about everything and anything in Ireland, with a harder edge. In this episode, I talked to the TD, Mark Ward. We discussed his childhood growing up in Neilstown or Clondalkin and his road to becoming a TD in the Dail, to his campaign to get more tighter regulations on the sale of nitrous oxide and spread awareness about its dangers. So, Mark, do you want to just tell me a little about yourself and your background to start off?
Okay, well, I grew up in North Clondalkin, which is probably, people know it, probably the Neilstown area of Clondalkin, which when I moved up first there was absolutely nothing. There was houses, but there wasn't a shop, there wasn't a bus, there wasn't a school. So everything that my area has now, people like my parents and my neighbours had to go out and fight for. And that's how I kind of got involved with activism at that stage. Never involved with politics, didn't know what politicians were. Politicians to me were guys in suits. They didn't represent me, didn't speak the same language as me. But it was a really, really hard working area and really, really good people who went out and had to fight for, everything that they had from, as I said, from buses to schools to shops to health centres, wherever's in the community now. The first people that moved up there had to go and really and fight for. And that's kind of got me involved in politics at an early age, even though I call it activism.
Yeah, and I suppose like the Neilstown is probably, you've seen it change so much since you were kind of growing up to now. There's been a huge there's been an awful lot of good infrastructure in there. But we have schools now. We have a lovely library. There's still a hell of a lot. Like, it's still one of the most disadvantaged areas in Dublin. Yeah. Even the Public Index, it was the only part in Dublin that between 2016 and 2021, the last Public Index, were actually showed an increase in the amount of poverty in the area. So while on the outside it's looking a lot better, but there still is loads of ingrained poverty in the area, which needs to be tackled. And that is that something that kind of inspired you to put you on your path now? As you said, you don't really look at it as politics, you look at it as activism. Yeah, so I said, so my very first campaign that I would have got involved in was, I was in school, we hadn't got a secondary school, so we used to have to get a bus from Clondalkin up to Lucan into an old building that wasn't fit for purpose for the previous school there, but was okay for the kids in Neilstown to go to. So we had to go out and fight and campaign for a new school in Clondalkin. St. Kevin's is the school that's there now. And because I was a bit of a mouth and I could talk, I was put out on every radio station and every television station, and every time there was a student was needed to speak, it was myself that went out and spoke on behalf of the pupils in the school and describing the situation that we were in and advocating for a new school. And it's one of them campaigns that we actually won, because we did get a new school at the end. I think I was in 5th year by the time we got the school, but we got it for the last 2 years of my school in St. Kevin's. The school is still there now on the Fonthill Road. It's a fantastic school. So that was that kind of like your first foray into politics, sort of social activism? Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then I would have been involved in after that then. So I'm a big GA man, big soccer man. I played soccer, but I also managed soccer teams from a very, very young age. So I got involved in the community that way. So that was my way of being involved in the community. And then in relation to the party that I'm in with Sinn Féin, I haven't got an historical connection, family connections to Sinn Féin, but in my area at the time, the only people that I could see that were on the ground who were advocating for my family and my neighbours and my friends and my community was Sinn Féin. I didn't see anybody else from any other party around, and that kind of allowed me then to gravitate towards Sinn Féin at the time, and I've been a member and supporter ever since. So it almost seems like kind of that at the time those areas were kind of a bit maybe forgotten about, certain parties and kind of just left around the devices. And historically, and this is cynicism of politics. At the time, now it's changed now, and it's really changed over the last number of years. But it was probably one of the lowest turnouts and votes in the area. And other politicians looked there and said, "That's not worth their effort going into that area," which I think is really, really bad and really, really cynical. When I got involved first, there was a low turnout, but it didn't stop me keep working and working. Now at the moment we're up on average with every other area in the country when it comes to turnouts at elections now, because I like to see people see the benefits of getting out and voting for someone that they think is going to represent them either in the Dáil or at local level as well. Okay, yeah. And you're a behavioural therapist? Yeah, by trade, yeah. By trade. And with growing up and with your experiences and stuff, does that kind of influence you to become a behavioural therapist, as in to help out kind of in the community?
Yeah, so I would have had kind of a life-changing moment myself back in 18 years ago, 50 now, 30. When I was 32, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I was working in logistics at the time, really, really good at it. Didn't really like it. One of them jobs you kind of fall into. And so I had this kind of life-changing moment when I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Do I want to do something else? But am I physically going to be able to do that? Because at first diagnosed, you don't know what the long-term. So I decided to go to college. I was never in college before. I went to college at 32, 33, and I looked around my area. I said that there was an awful lot of addiction issues in my area growing up. I had a lot of family, friends, neighbours who would have been succumbed to addiction. It's just when there's poverty there, addiction usually follows hand in hand. So I decided to just do a level 5 course. It was the very first one that I done in addiction studies, and I absolutely loved it. So I went from there, and I ended up going into, I went into Minute. I done a degree in Minute. I also done a degree in UCD, and then I done a higher degree then in Carlow. So I went around different colleges and stuff like that. But at the time then, during that, I was also doing my training to become a behavioural therapist that was specialising in addiction and counselling. So at the end of my college, I was a fully qualified behavioural therapist as well. And I started working locally at first, and then I worked in a number of projects right across Dublin.
Did you see sort of like a pattern with people who were in addiction that, let's say, put them on that path?
Yeah, so poverty has an awful lot. Poverty underlines a hell of a lot, and trauma. So coming from a really disadvantaged area like my own, you can see trauma everywhere, and you'd see a lot of people that would have a lot of same trauma. So you'd have a cohort of people, and this is not anyway blaming anybody whatsoever. Just their circumstances. You'd have a lot of people that from my age whose mothers and fathers would have been either in industrial schools, Magdalene laundries, mother and baby homes, an awful lot of that, and that trauma was passed on. Intergenerational trauma would have been passed down. And when there's poverty then as well, when you can't escape your location, you can't escape from where you're from, sometimes people see taking a drug or a substance that's why it's called getting out of your head, because you're getting out of your head for a bit. You're getting a break from the trauma and the area you're from without actually having to physically move. And it does work on a certain level for a certain time until problems arise and after that. So that's why poverty, trauma and addiction always goes hand in hand.
Yeah, so people are sort of escaping the pain that they're feeling and the difficult situation that they're in. Yeah,
and drugs, as I said, drugs work on a certain level. Like it gives the person the ability to self-soothe. Gives them the ability to self-soothe an anxious inner world. And it does work on that level for a certain while until it stops working, and that's when the problems and the addiction and everything else that's associated that comes in after that then as well.
And it's like a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle, yeah.
Yeah. And that led you to working with Clondalkin Alcohol Support.
Yeah, the Dog Addiction Support Programme, Yeah, so I worked with CASP. I'm actually on the board still with CASP, so I'm still there. I started working with CASP. I actually believe not. I started off in a CE scheme because I was out of work with the MS, and I was in college, so I managed to get myself on a CE scheme, and I had to say it was fantastic. I worked in CASP. I got a lot of on the ground experience. I've done a couple of years of CE there. I managed to get qualified, and then I moved off somewhere else then after that to get full-time work because I young family and stuff. You need to pay the bills as well. So I went down. I started working in Bluebell, and I worked in Inchicore. I worked out in Dunleary. I worked in a number of organisations then after that then as well. But it was the same issues in an awful lot of the same areas, except when I went to Bluebell, which I found, and I want to touch on the cannabis use at the time, was when I was in Clondalkin and CASP, there was a lot of polydrug use. So it was basically there was it could have been heroin, it could have been crack cocaine, it could be benzodiazepines. Basically, anybody could get their hands on they were taking. But when I went down to Bluebell, the cohort of young men that were using the service, and boys as well, from the age of 16 to 25, all they were doing was using cannabis as their only drug of choice. It was very similar to what happened in Dublin in the 80s with the heroin epidemic, because even though they weren't taking heroin, they were smoking cannabis. All of them, to a man or a boy, were out there either losing they're out of school, or they lost jobs, broke down relationships, start getting involved in crime, start building up drug debts, and then found themselves in front of the courts and stuff like that. And the only drug they were using was cannabis, which was really, really eye-opening to me.
Yeah, because that kind of goes against what people are thinking now, is that, it's relatively harmless.
Yeah, so what's happening is, there's the weed, it's like the weed that came in then, it's been genetically modified. It increases the THC level, which gives you the high. And but it decreases the CBD level, which brings you back down. So cannabis in its natural state kind of works. It's like yin and yang. One brings you up, one brings you down, and it generally works. And there's no long-term issues in it. But these new strains that are being brought out are to increase the intensity of the high that the person is getting, and to decrease the drug, the part of the drug that makes them come back down. So that's where a lot of the problems were coming on. It was bringing out any underlying psychosis that might have been there in the young people. So we had young people that were under psychiatric care, people going into hospital as well. Now, not everybody, but if there was any underlying condition there, what this done was it dragged it out of the young person, kicking and screaming, and the young person found themselves in psychosis and in trauma.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't initially think that cannabis would do that, but at the end of the day, it's a drug.
Yeah.
That, I suppose, like what you said, it's so much more potent. It's not like stuff back in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, it's like the hash that was back in the day, like as well. And it was like it was yin. It kind of gave you a little bit of a high and it brought you back down. And it worked on that level. But when people start messing around and increasing the potency of it, I said that's where you're going to have problems.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And so after that, when you're kind of working in the various different areas as a behavioural therapist specialising with addiction, then when did you start to move towards your path to becoming a TD? So
I always call myself an accidental politician. Like, it was never a plan. And you probably get loads of politicians to say the same thing. Like, but,
it's a good word.
But genuinely, it was never my plan. Sometimes things happen at certain times of your life, and you take a chance and you see where it goes. So I was always involved with the party. So even though but I'd never had any ambitions to run for council, for TD, for anything at all. Never. I was happy enough being active in the party, active in my community, and working and raising a family in the area. Very happy doing that. In 2016, then I was working very closely in the area with Owen O'Brien, who's is one of the other TD for the area. And just in a conversation, he said, I think I remember the chance of getting elected in the next general election. We're going to need somebody to take my place on the council, be a co-op would be interested. And my first thing was no. Like I was like, no. I said, so I'm happy enough doing what I'm doing, and then I thought about it, like I was at the getting me stage where I'm at the getting to a decent level of education. I was at the getting to a decent level of fulfilment in my employment and stuff like that. And I always wanted to be in a position where I could advocate for better change. And I said, do you know what? Being a councillor gives me a little bit better position to advocate for better changes for the people that I represent. I'll give it a go. So I had a chat with Owen, and then the party then themselves decided. So it's not just Owen makes the decision; it's the members locally that will make that decision. And they made the decision and asked me would I be co-opted on to Owen. So I done that very, very in 2016. Actually, I gave up working because I banged my head a little bit on this one, because I gave up a well-paid job to become a councillor full time. And at the time, that was changed a little bit. But at the time, you're talking about €16,500 a year for a local councillor. So that's why most councillors don't do it full time.
Yeah.
They do it as part of their other jobs. And I get that financially. But I'm one of these people that I have to give things 100%. I couldn't split myself between the two of them, so I wanted to give it 100%. So I done that, and I said I'll do that for a few years, and if I need to go back to work, then I will go back to work. So that was 2016. I became on to South Dublin County Council as the public representative for Clondalkin at the time, before the boundary changes. I found it really, really. I not landed on my feet, but I found myself getting into the middle of it very, very quickly and very, very comfortable. And I found myself that it was something that I was able to manage. Not everybody can, because it's not a usual place to be. But I had a good team around me. Cottle King would have been the group leader from Tala. He was our group leader. Really good guidance up in South Dublin at the time. And then very quickly after that, in 2018, it was suggested to me, which I thought was bonkers, that the position of mayor was coming up for South Dublin, and would I be interested in being the party? Now, I was only on the council 2 years, so people there donkey's years, and the members up there asked me would I be interested in being put forward for mayor. So the way mayor works is that it's the councillors themselves that vote for the mayor of the day, and I won that election. Now, I won it by one vote, and just the way these things go, the very last vote, because my second name is Ward, W was myself, so it got to me. I think it was, at the time, it was 16 all at the time, between me and the Fine Gael councillor, and I was like, I had to think about this one now. So I decided to give myself the nod, and I was the mayor. So I have to say, that was being the mayor of South Dublin was an absolutely fantastic year. It was one of the best years that I had as a politician. I got to see all different cultures, all different parts of the council of different communities, different groups. So it gave me a kind of holistic view of the whole county, and I thought it was a fantastic honour, fantastic achievement, and to be the first citizen of the county was something that I will take with me forever. Then 2019 local elections came up. I decided, obviously I was running again. I topped the poll, I got through on the first count. It was a really good result. But at the same time as local elections, there was a European election on. And one of the candidates for the European election was successful, and her name was Frances Fitzgerald. She was the former Tánaiste, former Minister for Justice. She won a seat in Europe, which meant that her seat came vacant in my area of Dublin Midwest, which meant there was going to be a by-election. I, at the time again, wasn't thinking about being a TD.
He was in bonkers again.
The party came to me and says, listen, Mark, you had a really good election, you have a good profile. We think you're the guy that we want to run in this by-election. Now, there was a lot of media scrutiny on it, because there was only 4 by-elections at the time in the country. I wasn't given a cat's hope in hell of winning it. I think Fine Gael would have been the favourites because it was so-called Fine Gael C. But I won it, and I won it very, very well. And then I ended up in TD. And I was like, how did I end up here? Because this wasn't part of my plan. That was in 2019. And then very, very quickly, this is, my father still slags me over this one. My very first day in the Dail, speaking in the Dail, after being elected, was trying to force the government to have a general election. Right, so someone's made a comment like, Turkey's voting for Christmas here, Mark. This is what you're only in. So there was a general election called very, very quickly in 2020. So I had only 9 sitting days between when I was elected and the general election. So I could have been the second shortest TD in history if I hadn't have been successful in the 2020 general election. So I contested the 2020 general election with myself and Owen O'Brien as the 2 TDs, and we came in first and second. It was a fantastic result, and we retained them 2 seats then in 2024 last year. Yeah, 2024.
Wow, so that was a very gutsy move.
Yeah. So I said it wasn't something that was planned. Like when I was working in addiction, I was quite happy working in addiction, and then the opportunity came up to be a counsellor, and I was like, and I took that chance. And then the mayor kind of thing happened. That wasn't planned. Then the general election, the by-election. If that by-election hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't be a TD now, or more than likely probably wouldn't be. Yeah. It's just the way situations kind of happen at certain times in people's lives, and you have choices to make, and then sometimes them choices kind of direct your life then after that, and that's what's kind of happened for myself then.
So it sounds like your journey to becoming a TD is the opposite of a career politician, really, because you're working so much within the community.
Yeah, so I definitely not a career politician. I've never and you do have people, and they do have more power to them. If that's the way they want to set out their career path, that's fine. But I was never part of my plans whatsoever to be a politician. And even now, as a TD, it's like I'm happy being a TD. I have ambitions, hopefully, to get into government sometime. Hopefully that we would be leading a government of change hopefully after the next election. But after that, then we'll see what happens.
Sure.
So I just take things sometimes a day at a time.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. It's a great journey. And you think, so you said your dad still gives you slaggings over. If it didn't pay off, that gamble, you'd probably never hear the end of it.
Yeah, so when I said I was going to go back into work, so see, 2019, and this good old guy still slags me over it. 2019, I won the local elections. I wasn't planning to, at the time the by-election was coming up, but I wasn't planning on running it. So I said, I have to go back to work. I need to supplement the wages as a councillor because it was very low because I had kids that were going to need to get into this stage where they go to college and stuff like that. So I needed to get more finance coming in. So I went and got myself a job. I met this group. They worked in a disadvantaged area, with young lads that were in the area, the outreach. So young lads that were in the area that might have been getting themselves into a bit of trouble. So to work with them directly on the streets and stuff. I'd done that work before, loved it. I said, there we go. They were very open, said, listen, I'm also a counsellor, and they worked around my hours and they bent over backwards to get me. I was meant to start. the by-election came up, and I had 3 weeks. I said, listen, I'll give you a show. Can I hold off the job for 3 weeks? I said, because this by-election, they're asked me to run it. I will be running it. Haven't got a cat's hope in hell of winning it, so I'll be back just in 3 weeks. So, long story short, that guy, a guy called Brendan, who works for a place called The Base in Ballyferma, he was in front of an Oireachtas committee there last year, just talking about youth work and young people, and I was talking to him beforehand. He says, "You remember me?" He said, "You said you'd be back in 3 weeks." He said, "That's a long 3 weeks."
long 3 weeks indeed. Yeah. And so, yeah, like it's interesting because even if it didn't pan out in the 3 weeks, you still would have been doing community work. You still would have been serving the community. And
if there's an election called tomorrow and I lost my seat, I'd probably go back working on that again if I could. Yeah. Like, and that's who I am. Like, so it's being active in the community, and it's being a part of a community, whether it's my community or another community. But it's being part of that kind of grassroots kind of working for the betterment of a community that you're living in and working in. Yeah, I think it's important.
And so, with working for the community, I see you're putting out a lot of awareness about nitrous oxide use.
Yeah. So I first noticed, for your listeners don't know what nitrous oxide is, it's known locally as laughing gas or fast gas. There's another couple of names now, whippets and silver bullets. So I first noticed, it was during COVID, around 2021. I noticed these small silver canisters just being littered all over the States.
Yeah.
So I'm a very curious person, so I started asking questions about what they were. I didn't know what they were at first. And then I found out very, very quickly that these were nitrous oxide, and kids were using them as a quick high. And the way nitrous oxide works is that the young person or the person will inhale it, it cuts down the oxygen to the brain, it gives them that light-headed giddy effect, which gives where the name laughing gas comes from. Okay? So, but anything that's going to cut down oxygen to the brain is could have long-term effects. I always say that young people are doing it, are taking, it's like Russian roulette. They don't know, you might get away with it 99 times out of 100, but that one time could have long-term debilitating effects. So I've been working on that since then, trying to really get awareness on it, trying to see if there's any, what the rules were in relation to the legislation that's in place, if there's anything that can be done. So the first thing I managed to do was I kind of harassed and harangued the HSE just to get it included on the drugs.ie website that they have, so at least drugs organisations and parents can go up and see some legitimate facts on what actually nitrous oxide was. So that we won that one very, very early. I started looking at how it's coming into the country and all that, but because it has legitimate purposes, you can't just outright ban it. So, for example, it's used in the catering industries as a propellant for whipping cream. It's used in dental industry as a kind of a pain relief. It's used in veterinary industries for the same reasons as well. Mm-hmm. So you can't just out ban it, but you can kind of limit the amount of it is end up in the streets if you can. So I looked around different jurisdictions and I came across legislation that was introduced in Holland, and you know how liberal Holland are around their drug use. And if they're bringing in something to limit the amount of impact nitrous oxide was having on young people in their country, you know there's a problem. So I looked at their legislation and I kind of made it fit to a kind of Irish perspective rather than just going directly word for word with the Dutch. But the Dutch didn't do what we've done is basically we're including the people who are selling online. So in order to sell the product, you have to apply to the minister to get a licence. Okay? So the minister has to give you a licence then in order to sell that product. If you have that licence then, you're free to sell that, but you can only sell that to an approved list of purchasers. And those approved lists of purchasers have to apply again to the department whether they're on this approved list, and they have to be people who have a legitimate reason to use it. So vets, dentists, people in the catering trade, they can be on this approved list of purchasers. So the seller can only sell it to the approved list, and the approved list people can only use it for what it's legitimately used for. Anything outside of that is against the law. So you're regulating the sale of it. So what that does then, it gives, if somebody is selling it to people that they shouldn't be selling, they can lose their licence, and then there's also fines and up to custodial sentence at that stage. But the losing the licence is the big thing. Once you lose your licence, you haven't got a licence, you can't operate in the Irish market. If you're on the approved list of sellers or purchasers and you're seen to be using it for a purpose that is not legitimate for, then you're taken off that approved list of purchasers. There's also fines and there's also up to custodial sentence at that stage. So it's not the panacea. It's not going to stop all nitrous oxide getting into the country, but what it will do, it will curtail it, and it will reduce the amount that is ending up in the hands of young people.
And so now, like, they can just go and buy it.
So I can go. If I go online now, I advise you have a look yourself after this podcast. You can go online and you can buy them yourself online. There's a box that says, "Are you a business or are you a wholesaler?" You just tick yes, but there's no checks and balances after that. So I can go and buy them online. Not a bother. Even though I was on the prime time there during the week, and that's what they were able to go on themselves. And they said we ordered yesterday and we got 50 canisters the next morning.
50?
50, yeah. And the small silver one-hit wonders. And they changed over time as well. So as you said at the start, there were the small kind of 8 grams of nitrous oxide at the start, the small silver bullets as they were called. But they've progressed. These big, large industrial canisters are 670 grams. Now, there is no legitimate use of these in the catering industry. There's no legitimate use of these in the dental industries. These industrial side canisters have no legitimate uses, yet they're being sold. And they're being sold. So the companies that are making these are making fast profits on them, and they know they're marketing and tailoring these towards young people. It's fast gas, go fast or go home is on that thing. Other ones have come with us and have the ride of your life is on that thing. They're also coming in flavours. So they're coming in flavours in relation to, it's very similar to vapes, whether that's blueberry flavour, raspberry flavour, or whatever flavour you want, very similar to what's coming in vapes. So the question I always ask, if you're using something as a propellant in the catering industry, why do you need a flavour? If you're using something in the dental industry, why do you need a flavour? If you're using it in the veterinary industry, why does it need to be, why do horses need blueberry flavours? I don't think so. So when you think about it, so they're definitely being marketed and tailored towards young people.
Wow, that's insane. I didn't realise that they had flavours and the marketing on it, the catchy logos and stuff.
And then even the ads then as well. So I haven't seen the ads on our television, but in Europe, this is not just an issue across in Dublin, it's Ireland. It's right across Europe as well. So, but some of the other European countries wouldn't have the same levels of scrutiny on their advertising as we would have, or even some of the online advertising. There's different rules and regulations. So some of the advertising are just people looks like they're having a great time having a party, and fast gas is in the middle of it.
That is crazy. What did you say one of the slogans was?
Go fast or go home, or come with us and have the ride of your life.
That's really...
or the high of your life as well is another one as well, yeah.
It's very insidious, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That is insane. I didn't realise that, because I did notice that, just walking around years ago, you would see the little silver bullet canister things. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I just started noticing like a box. I think last week I seen a box.
Yeah, with 6 in them.
Yeah, they're very big, blue and black thing. I think fast gas or something?
Fast gas being one of the manufacturers.
And I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And like, I know obviously it's bad when they're taking the little ones, but now it's a group of young fellas taking the huge canister. It must be so bad.
So what we're having at the moment is only this week, there was a report by the Irish Medical Council, done a report on Tallaght Hospital. Yeah. There was 18 people in the last year who have presented to Tallaght Hospital from using fast gas who have now been diagnosed with a neurological condition. So it depletes the vitamin B12 in someone's body. The B12 coats the kind of nervous system in your body. So if that coating is taken off, it's leading to difficulties in your extremities, your balance, your thinking, all that kind of stuff as well. So these young people these are only 18 that have neurological condition. We've other people that we have being presented with frostbite because it's cold compressed. They have large canisters. If they don't put them directly into the balloons, what they usually do, sometimes they can inhale directly from the can. And because they're holding it between their legs, it's cold compressed and they're getting 3rd-degree burns from the frostbite. So there was a number of young people that presented to Crumlin Children's Hospital with it. We've also seen a 175% increase in the amount of young people who have presented to the adolescent addiction services from the HSE in Cherry Orchard. 175% increase in 1 year in the amount of young people who are presenting looking for help with it. My own local drug and alcohol task force have a youth part, YDAP youth drug and alcohol programme, and they have young people as young as 12 who are accessing their service just to get help around nitrous oxide. So it's really, really difficult, and it's really, really, as you said, insidious, because in fairness to a lot of parents, and I didn't know, and I work in addiction, and when I seen the first, I had no idea what they were. So parents probably don't know what's going on. So the first thing that needs to happen, outside of legislation, which I have ready to go, if the government want to go with me, they can, but is to have this big awareness campaign. A big awareness campaign. So to let parents know, to let teachers know, to let the good adults in young people's lives know exactly what this stuff is. I was talking to one parent who thought it was helium. So she thought that her kid was doing helium the way you would do it inhale helium at a party through a balloon. It changed your voice. You have a bit of laugh out of it. No harm. She thought that's what was going on. Didn't realise there was something else going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
And these kids who are presenting at the hospitals who are 18 and with these neurological injuries, so to speak, are they lifelong? Or
yeah, they can be lifelong. Yeah, so that 10-second high that you're getting from this fast gas, from this nitrous oxide, could have long-term implications on it. And because it's, I wouldn't call it a trend because it's been going on for a number of years, but because it's fairly new in relation to the amount that's being used, it's been around years, but it's not to the level that it is now. Yeah. We don't really know the long-term effects that's going to have because it's a very new on the scene compared to other drugs.
Wow, I didn't realise, and I suppose that's why you're saying we need the awareness campaign, how much of an issue is and the damage.
Yeah.
The damage it does is horrific, the damage that it's doing, especially someone, 18 years old, their whole life ahead of them for.
And I was talking and I was listening to other people that was on other shows and talking as well, like young lads that were really good footballers. They haven't got the same ability to move their legs the way they used to be at one stage, and they wouldn't have the full control over them. So even at that level, it's affecting people, which is really, really frightening.
It's life changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely need for that legislation to come in because it's so easily accessed and it's. Yeah.
And there's other things as well, so which I only found out recently, and I'm doing a bit of work on it at the moment. So there's been anecdotal reports in Ireland, and there's been concrete reports in across Europe and especially in Britain in relation to young people taking nitrous oxide and driving, and it's caused a number of fatalities. Now, there's been anecdotal. People have said it to me, they've seen people doing it, but I haven't had any proof, and I have no in Ireland. But there has been reports in Britain and across Europe where they have been able to identify that nitrous oxide has been a part of the reason why the person might have died and crashed the car. Over here at the moment, they don't, when they're doing the roadside drug tests and alcohol tests, they don't test for nitrous oxide. So that's something else that I'm going to be looking to bring in as well, just to make sure that we're ticking every box here when it comes to nitrous oxide, that we're not leaving any gaps for people to be able to get away with it, especially when it comes to driving, because it's lethal.
Yeah.
It's lethal.
Yeah, anything that can damage and affect your brain so much and
absolutely
causes such impairment. Yeah. And like you said, it's no longer just only the little canisters, it's the big giant, big giant ones.
And there's bigger again. So I went from this, that's what frightened me, and I can show you the photograph of it. I started off with the 8-gram silver canisters, moved very quickly up to the 670-gram ones, and then not that long ago, our local tidy town sent me a photograph. The Clondalkin tidy town said, "Mark, what are coming across this industrial 2.5 litres of it. Like, it's huge. So I have a photograph of the three of them together when you can see the nitrous oxide going up in stages and it. But them big ones, they have no legitimate purposes. They're not used in the catering industry. They're not used in the dentistry industry.
Like what you said, why would a chef or someone in the kitchen need gas that's flavoured what? Raspberry, whatever?
Yeah, raspberry or blueberry or whatever it might be, yeah.
Oh my God, it's insane. I never knew it was that bad, and I think probably a lot of people listening probably didn't have an idea either.
No, and most people don't. And I said, it's only the last while because there's certain reports coming out, and I've been pushing for it. And even other politicians and TDs, when I'm talking, they're not aware of it. They seen a line around the estates, but they wouldn't be aware of what it was. You know what I mean? Now they are starting to become aware now. So I'm hoping with this raised awareness around it in the last while and the amount of work that are being put in, that we can bring in legislation that is going to limit the amount that's going to end up in the hands of young people.
Yeah. Well, fair play. I think it's definitely something that's absolutely needed, and you're bringing awareness to it. So, yeah, we need more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
definitely. Well, Mark, is there anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
Well, there's loads I could talk about. The other thing as well, right, and I've been very advocate on this as well. So the housing situation is affecting everybody. There's not a family in this country that's not affected. I've children now who are adults now that are we're never going to be able to leave home. And that's where they are. So it's really, really, really difficult. I spoke about when I became the mayor. The year before I became the mayor, when I was only a councillor, I became homeless myself. Now, nobody knew about it, except for my family. I stayed in homeless accommodation. I didn't want to be seen to be using my position as a county councillor to advocate on my own behalf. So I went through the same procedures as everybody else and stayed in homeless accommodation. So I was 6 months homeless before I found somewhere. And I only went public when I became mayor. And the reason I went public when I became mayor was my thing was, if it can happen to the poor citizens of the county, it can happen to anybody. And it was just to break down that stigma. So I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we have in relation is to solving this housing crisis. And I just think there needs to be a big change, a radical change in how we deliver housing in this country. Because what happened over the last number of years, that we put everything into the hands of private developers to solve the public housing problem, it's not working. It's definitely not working. So I think we need to go back to what we've done in the past and having public housing on public land. And I think that would be the first way that we'd be able to resolve this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I presume you've seen the ad that went out.
Oh, I seen the ad, which was unbelievable. How to move back in with your parents and be a responsible adult back in your parents and do the dishes. Make sure you do the dishes now and they won't see it as a child anymore. That was absolute. Now, the makers of the ad, I know the charity who made it on behalf of the department. No problem with them. They were doing what they were asked to do. Spun out really good organisation. I've worked with them in the past on mental health, but it just goes to show how out of touch some people in the departments are and some people in government are if they think this is a good idea.
Yeah, it's very kind of insulting and almost a little bit dystopian in terms of where we're at in terms of people owning their own house and starting their own family.
Yeah, you know, I moved into my own house at the time in my early 20s, like because I could. The market was there. I was able to do it. The availability was there. No kids in it. Like my eldest daughter's 25. Like she's like, it's not long back from Australia. She's doing her masters now, but she's like, where do I go after this, Dad? Yeah. Like, she doesn't want to be living home with her mum. She wants to be out making a life for herself, and she's finding it really, really difficult. And she's not on her own. Yeah, she's not on her own.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's a very sad state of affairs that it's kind of come to this.
Yeah, and you see, I think you're going to have nearly 5,500, probably more children going to be homeless this Christmas, and it won't be. I think there's out of them 5,500. I think there's 3,500 of them it's not their first Christmas in homelessness. They could be on the second or the third Christmas in homelessness, and on any kind of barometer of how we are helping the most vulnerable people in society, we're failing. And we need to improve on that.
Yeah, God, yeah, it's a bad situation. But yeah, hopefully now in future, I know we can say hopefully, but at least we do have some people looking at it.
Yeah. Well, we need a radical change.
We need radical change.
Radical change, and that's what we need.
And hopefully something can be done in the future. Yeah, but on that issue. But Mark, I really appreciate you coming in and talking to me today, and it's really, really interesting to hear your story and all the work you've done and the work that you're doing, especially now in particular with the awareness with nitrous oxide. So yeah, it was really, really interesting chatting. So I really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Patrick. Really enjoyed that today. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to the second episode of Talking with Patrick. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends. The theme song of Talking with Patrick is called Instant Blues by Richie Crossdale. Check him out on Spotify. More episodes coming soon. Stay tuned.